Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We are going to discuss about Spark MLlib module. So, in previous sessions, we have tried and understood the overview of Spark framework, right? Spark framework. Apache Spark basically is an open source distributed computing framework, right? So, how does this basically help in computing or implementing machine learning languages or machine learning algorithms? That's what we are trying to understand today. So let me quickly walk you through with this Spark. Okay, I request everyone to be on mute for clean recording. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself. Right. So Apache Spark, as I said, is an open source in-memory cluster computing framework. It's not a programming language, it is a framework, right? And it is built for speed, and it is an interactive programming language. The computation will happen on the memory of multiple computers which are interconnected as a cluster. To give you a picture, let's say this is my computers. These are all the computers that are interconnected. Each computer will have dedicated memory, right? Individual computers will have RAM. So the computation of the application that you are developing, so there is a code application that you want to execute on a very big data. So that execution can happen in very quick speeds, very fast execution can be done, right? Using Spark. Right? And that is because the application gets broken down into tasks and multiple nodes basically execute these subtasks, and the execution happens in memory. It does not happen on the disk. Right? That's the advantage, and that's the reason why machine learning algorithms can be implemented very fast, because your machine learning algorithms are generally iterative algorithms. Iterative means I have multiple records. For training purpose, in machine learning algorithms, for calculation purpose, for training purpose, we read each record sequentially from your sample data. So we take first record, we train. Second record, again we train the model, right? So that way you are accessing the data iteratively. Now what happens in Spark is the data is sitting on the disk. Let's say this is your disk, right? So data is sitting on the disk initially, but when the application needs to be executed, the data first instance is getting recorded or loaded into memory. So this is disk. First, when I want to access the data, it will be there on the disk only. Then it is getting loaded into the memory. This is your RAM, right? Now, first time loaded. But when you are trying to access the data consecutively, iteratively, you don't access disk anymore. The data is directly available in memory. So you're going to fetch the memory, the data in the memory, and get the executions done. And everybody knows, I mean, it's pretty common sense that we understand the speed of the disk access compared to the speed at which the memory is accessed is much faster, right? The memory access is much faster. Hence, the executions becomes super fast. It is said to be 100 times faster compared to any of your regular programs. Now, the good part the Spark features are that it is open source, it is distributed and parallel computation. As I explained, the task gets distributed and executed on multiple computers, and parallelly these tasks, subtasks are getting executed. And the execution is happening in the computer's memory. These are the two features that I was talking about, iterative and interactive. Interactive means you execute line by line code and understand what it is doing. Now, the advantage of Spark is the data sets can also be split, right? It works on split the data sets which are split and stored in multiple computers. Okay, now these are all the bunch of benefits. Spark runs with real-time application scenario as well. It requires commodity hardware. It has fault tolerance. It has scalability. Data engineers, data analysts, and data scientists are using Spark, and Spark can work on both Windows and as well as Linux operating systems. And if I look at the history, Spark is developed using Scala programming language. Now, the very good benefit that Spark has is it is programmable, right? Or the functions that you're writing, the code that you're writing can be in any one of these 4 languages. And in the industry, predominantly Python is being used for machine learning implementations. Right? Yeah, so that's about the features of Spark, a quick introduction. Now we will be looking into Python code for implementing machine learning algorithms. Now when we compare Spark with Hadoop, which is a big data framework, we see that Spark competes only with the MapReduce component of Hadoop, right, which is a computing framework, which basically says that Hadoop has storage as well as computing framework, whereas Spark has only computing framework. It is not a storage component. I mean, it does not have any storage. So for accessing the data, it will refer to Hadoop, or it can refer to Hadoop. Okay, this is a comparison between Hadoop and Spark. And the advantages for implementing multiple solutions, Spark alone can be used. Whereas in big data, there are n number of different tools. For example, if you see here, if I have to implement machine learning algorithms on big data, I have to use a tool called, or a project called as Mahout. Whereas in Spark, I have a module called MLlib, and that's what we are going to see today. Now, this is what happens in Spark. Spark is basically a master-slave architecture. It is designed on top of master-slave architecture, where you will have one master. I mean, in the entire network of computers, you will define one computer as master, and we call it as Spark driver. And the rest of the nodes, which are defined as slaves here, they are called as Spark workers. Okay, multiple workers would be there, and you will have only one driver. So this Spark driver basically gets the information from the cluster manager about the resources, and then assigns the application by splitting it into tasks to different computers. This is basically the function. So if you can see, I have a big application or the code that I have to execute. It gets split into tasks, and these tasks are assigned to worker nodes. This is worker 1, worker node 2, worker node 3, worker node 4. Assume I have a 5 node cluster, right? So this is basically your master, the 5th node. So this node is responsible for assigning the tasks, and these worker nodes are responsible for getting the task executed and transferring the result back to the master. And at the master, you consolidate or collate all the data and give the results. Right? This is what happens with respect to Spark execution. Now these are basically, this is called as unified stack. These are the various components in Spark. It starts at this level where you have data. These are data sources where the data is lying. It could be Hadoop, it could be Cassandra, it could be Hive, it could be HBase, PostgreSQL, JSON files, CSV files, RDBMS, cloud. It could be a number of different data sources other than this as well. Remember, these are the tools or softwares where the data is residing. You will access the data and then convert the data into a form called as RDD. Resilient distributed data set. This is a memory abstraction of the data, and this memory that we are talking about is distributed memory. That means, again, let me draw the cluster. These are all multiple nodes I have in the cluster. Assume each node has a memory, right? Each computer will have a memory local to that computer. So you can imagine that all that memory is combined. I'm collating all that memory and I'm imagining that there is a single big memory. So this memory is basically collected from distributed memory, right? Different objects, right? Different memory objects, right? So your RDD is nothing but the data which is residing here, which is residing here, which is residing here. So I just project all these pieces of data and create one big data set. So it's a memory abstraction. It's like an image of your data. Okay. It's called as resilient distributed data sets. Okay. Now, this Spark core is the most important foundational object or component of Spark, which basically does the conversion of our data into RDD thanks to the data frame API. Then it connects to various data sources. It also does resource management. It also connects with cluster manager and takes the information. It acts like a driver basically. It does memory management, right? All these management related tasks are done by Spark. Then we have Spark SQL. This is for doing structured query language on Spark. Then we have Spark Streaming. This is for real-time data analysis. Then we have graphics. This is for network analysis. And for achieving all these, we have packages, ready-made inbuilt packages. And today's discussion is on top of this machine learning module. So Spark MLlib is a machine learning library of Spark which contains all the machine learning functionalities. We can talk about supervised and unsupervised learning techniques, regression, clustering, classification, collaborative filtering, right? All these kind of machine learning algorithms are available under machine learning library. Okay. Now we will simply import these functionalities and execute the code, right? Import the functionalities from the libraries, pass the data, and then try to fit the data to these algorithms. Just how you have learned Python and R implementation, similarly we are going to do Spark MLlib. Now I will be using a library called as PySpark. PySpark basically is initiating Spark framework, and basically I'm using Python to do that. Okay, so I'll launch Python and I'll initiate Spark framework. That means I'm writing the code in Python, but execution is happening in Spark. So code is written in this language, Python language, and execution is happening using Spark framework. So if I talk about machine learning, right, we basically develop systems that automatically adapt and customize themselves to individual users, like spam identifications, right, spam filters. We'll also have data mining concepts, broadly speaking. One of the example is market basket analysis. We can also go to a little advanced techniques of machine learning implementations, which basically require intelligence, that is basically called as artificial intelligence, like handwritten characters identifications. We can use KNN technique or any classification method to do that. Right? So these are all basic examples of machine learning algorithms. Now, if I have to talk about implementing the machine learning algorithms on a very huge amount of data, then it takes a lot of computational power and it takes a lot of time and effort, of course. Right? Now, world is looking at 5G very soon. We are staring down at 5G network. Already, the industry is managing and accessing exabytes of data. Very soon we will go to yottabytes and zettabytes as well. So if you have so much of data, right, developing these algorithms will definitely take time. You need big data systems for these kind of huge amount of complex data, which needs to be used for training on machine learning algorithms. Now you cannot use R or Python in that cases. These are memory based softwares where they will not be able to have capability to handle the data over a period of over a specific limit. Right? Now MLlib is a library in Spark which helps us implement this machine learning algorithms, the applications like you see classification, regression, anomaly detection, recommendation, all these things on distributed framework by using the capability of multiple computers. So we split the data, we train the data using multiple computers, and we test the data, test the model on multiple computers. So it becomes very easy. Originally, these algorithms are very computationally intensive or heavy. If I have to execute it on a single computer, it will take a lot of time. So what I do, I split my data set into RDDs, of course, memory abstractions, on the cluster, and I take the advantage of multiple computers which are interconnected to execute the same machine learning algorithm parallelly, right, on all these computers on part of the data that that particular computer can access. That's the logic. Now, when I talk about machine learning, we have supervised and unsupervised learning. Of course, we also have reinforcement learning. In the previous sessions, I have shown how supervised learning techniques can be implemented, especially regression, right? How we use Spark MLlib package to implement regression technique. Now, today we are going to talk about clustering, unsupervised learning technique implementation using Spark MLlib. Now, this is the flow chart that we need to understand when we're talking about supervised learning, where we partition the data set. We develop the model on training data set, and then we evaluate the model on test data set, right? And whichever model gives us the best result on test data set, that would be used for prediction, right? So when the new data is given, we use this trained model, selected best trained model, right, for prediction purpose, and whatever the predicted results that we get, that is consumed as predicted outcome. Now, when we talk about unsupervised learning, that partitioning is not required. We are not predicting anything, right? So partitioning is not required. Okay, that's something that we need to understand. Okay, now, what is clustering? What is unsupervised learning and what is clustering? In unsupervised learning, excuse me, in unsupervised learning, we are not predicting. There is no prediction. That basically means I am not having any specific variable of interest. I don't look at a variable of my interest. From the historical data, when you look at the historical data, I am treating all the variables as similar, alike. These are all independent variables. There is no output variable. Okay. Now, using that, we will still try to analyze the data in identifying some kind of patterns or anomalies, basically. Now, clustering is an application which tries to identify homogeneous groups in the dataset. Now, how do we do that? Let us try and understand. Now, before I proceed, in Spark, we have two packages or two parts of MLlib libraries. One is MLlib, which is the new age library, which is getting more and more matured. A lot of people are contributing to this particular library. Whereas Spark ML is not so mature. People have slowly stopped developing these applications in that particular library. So we will also focus more on MLlib. And using Spark, we will be applying machine learning on huge data sets, which gives us the results at a much higher speeds. And of course, you can improve or enhance that performance by increasing more and more nodes. So it can be scalable, right? Now this is k-means clustering. Also, we call it as non-hierarchical clustering. Now in non-hierarchical clustering, we do not know what is, sorry, my bad. We have to specify what is the number of clusters that I have to create from the data set. If I have a data set with huge number of records, then I want to say segregate this data into k number of groups. These groups should be homogeneous. Okay, so a user specified k partitions will be created, and in k-means clustering, randomly we create the partitions and then try to assign the records in such a way that the clusters are close to each other. The records inside the cluster, this is a cluster assume, the records, the data points are closely placed within the cluster. So this closeness is nothing but the homogeneity. And to measure the homogeneity, we use variation, calculation of variance, which basically is identify the center of the cluster and from the center measure the distances of each and every data point. Now try to frame the cluster in such a way that the distance from the center to the cluster to the record is the shortest. So if I have k clusters, then assign the record in such a way that it is closest to a particular cluster centroid. This way, you are trying to minimize the within cluster variance. You are minimizing the distances. That means variance or spread of the data is reduced, right? So this is what we do in k-means clustering, right? But here we are saying I am going to upfront define key value. So if you have some data, n number of data points, let's say I have 20 data points, 20 records. Now on these 20 records, how do I split the data in k? Now let's say I'm saying k is equals to 5. So I have to group the 20 records into 5 clusters. But which record belongs to which cluster, we don't know. That's what we have to find out. Homogeneity. Now why should I split this data in 5 clusters? Maybe 4 clusters or 3 clusters is a good option. Or maybe I need to have 6 clusters for this data set. Right? We are trying to understand at what value of k the data can be merged or placed in most homogeneous way. In order to identify that, we use a calculation called as within sum of squares. Within sum of squares. Now this within sum of squares is nothing but center, this is cluster center, and the distance to the data points within the cluster. So I measure the squared distances and I add them. So variance formula is taken and modified a little. I don't divide that by degrees of freedom, I just take this. This is basically your within sum of squares. And this is being minimized. Try and get the least within sum of squares to identify the best homogeneous groups. Right? So for one cluster, I take center, that is average, and I subtract the distance. Basically, I measure this distance, this distance, this distance, this distance, and I add them. Like that, if I have 5 clusters, for each cluster I will get 1 WSS. So this parameter is used, or this measure is used to identify the best clusters. But we need to identify what is the best K, isn't it? Selecting the K. So for different K values, say for example, K is equals to 2, K is equals to 3, K is equals to 4, K is equals to 5, K is equals to 6, like that. For different K values, we try to identify what is the total within sum of squares that I get. That means if I have 20 data points or 20 records, then I'm saying split them into 2. The clusters is represented using K. So I'm going to split this data into 2 clusters. For this cluster, I'll get 1 within sum of squares. For this, I'll get 1 within sum of squares. I add these two, I'll get total within sum of squares. Then I will pass K is equals to 3. That means I'm creating 3 clusters on this now. So here also I'll get WSS, here I'll get WSS, here also I'll get WSS. And I add all these, then I'll get total W within sum of squares. Right? Total within sum of squares. Now this way I plot the total within sum of squares on y-axis, the K values on x-axis, and I see at what K value you find a drastic decrease in that total within sum of squares. At what K value you can find the best homogeneity. Variation, decrease in the variation should be maximum. Okay, so that's what we try and do in K-means clustering, to select the best value of K. Okay, so this is what we are going to do now, but we are going to implement it on Spark, right? So let me go to this Spider. I have launched Spider. Now we have already seen this particular code. If you already are familiar with machine learning algorithms, then I'm using sklearn package to import k-means. sklearn is scikit-learn, right? But in Spark, I'm going to use PySpark ML clustering. So I'm importing PySpark, and then I'm importing machine learning algorithm module. Under that I have clustering module, from which I'm going to import k-means. So the function name is same, but the packages from which we are importing these functions are different. Okay, Spark works in a different way, Python works in a different way. Right, so let me run the code. First, of course, you have to install Spark on Windows, then configure it so that your Python can be executed, or you can call Spark from Python. So PySpark library has to be basically configured. Now I'm importing find Spark package, and I'm initializing the Spark, basically the Spark software. Now from here, of course, I will be initializing PySpark.SQL Spark session. So I'm kind of calling Spark SQL module because I want to work with structured data. I want to convert the unstructured data, if I have, into structured format. Okay, so PySpark.SQL and import Spark session. So this particular session that you are seeing, right, it is basically being executed, or the code gets executed on my single processor. My laptop has a single thread, single processor, multi-thread of course, right? And I am using local machine, basically local processor. If you have a cluster setup, then you can define that cluster setup here. After Spark session, you can define it, right? So this is your Spark session module that you are importing. Now using this Spark session, I'm creating an application called as Spark. I'm building an application. I'm calling that application as clustering, and I'm creating this particular session now, right? So it will have Spark context imported, or basically is calling the I should say a local machine. It's creating the environment. Spark session is basically creating the environment using which you will be able to execute the code. Okay, so if you have configured it on Hadoop, then you might want to call yarn as your cluster Spark context. Okay, those are different things that you will eventually learn later on. First, try and understand the clustering concept on a single node instance. So Spark, I have created this particular application now, and I'm importing k-means functionality from PySpark MLlib module. Now let us load the data set here. I have Spark read underscore CSV, whereas in Python we use pandas. We use pandas to import the library, the data set, and I'm using the same data set. Okay, you can see here I'm importing pandas data set, read underscore CSV. Here I'm saying Spark read.csv. But in Python, it also automatically inferring the data types. But here, the data types are not automatically inferred. I have to mention specifically to infer the schema. See what happens if I remove that and execute. There is a function called as print, infer schema, right? Print schema. If you observe here, everything is interpreted as string only, right? So I'm saying, hey, don't treat everything as string. Identify what is the schema of each column. So I'm saying infer schema is equals to true here. Okay. Now when I execute this, you can see print schema. It says only the first column is string, rest of the columns are integers. This is your data set. You can say university dot show. This is the data set name. Dot show will create or show you the data set, and it will always show you the first 20 rows. That's what your Spark SQL does. Okay, yeah. So I have SAT score, top 10, acceptance ratio, student faculty ratio, expenses, and graduation rate for universities. If you want to see the data set, let me open the data set directly here. So this is your data set, and you have 25 universities. So it's basically having SAT score, the top 10, the rankings, then acceptance ratio, how many people are given admissions, student faculty ratio, that basically talks about the ratio between how many students are getting assigned with one faculty. Then expenses, how much you have to pay in order to complete your graduation in that particular university, and how many people are graduating from that university year on year. So this is the percentage that is shown here, right? So this is the data set that we are going to now cluster. So when you want to do this, right, the application basically is, can I try and group the universities in such a way that maybe you can get tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 universities, probably, right? So let us see how to do that clustering in Spark now. Now, the problem with Spark is it does not work on the similar lines as Python or R. It doesn't take data frames. Okay. Now in Spark, we need to create an array of data points, a vector of a data points, which are going to be passed as input, and we call that as features. So we need to first identify all the features which needs to be converted into a vector, and that is basically something that you have to identify what all the columns you have to do it to combine. And then we have a function called as vector assembler. We import it and we create feature matrix or feature vector, and we call that as features. It's a default name. We have to call it as features. Now if you see here, I need to select only these columns for clustering. I don't need university name, right? So though I have these data points in separate column, I have to create a single column now. See what I'm doing? I import this vector assembler from feature module of machine learning library from PySpark, and I first define a list with these names, right? So I'm calling SAT score, top 10 and all this as a list. Now if you observe here, I have only features columns. I don't have the data set here. I've already have the data set loaded, right? You have seen the data set here, but it is not showing here if you observe. It's not a Python object. That is the reason it is not being shown there. Okay, it is a Spark object. Here in the variable column, you will only be able to see Python objects. And Python objects, this is a list, which basically is having the input column names. Now, vector assembler will take all these input feature columns and converts that into a vector. And it is called as features. I'm calling the output as feature vector. Okay, let me say feature vector. Okay, let me execute it, feature vector, and this is what I do. Right? So basically what I'm doing, I'm fitting this particular data and transforming the data points to get the feature vector, and I'm storing that output into data. If you say data.show, let me, if I say data.show, it is going to show you the columns, and look at this, the last column which says features is nothing but a single vector with all these values here. Okay, now I'm not interested in all these inputs, so I'll just have to take university names and features. So I can write a select query here. So you're fitting the same data set. I'm calling it as final data, but you're selecting only 2 columns. And I'm calling this as final data, and you can see this is what you get. Final data will have university names and features, input features. It's a feature vector. It's not an individual columns that we take. Now, if I have to measure the pairwise distances, if I have to measure the distances between centers and the universities, then I will be using Euclidean distance, right? But if I have to use Euclidean distance, the problem is the scale of each of this variable is different. SAT score has a different magnitude. Let me show you. SAT score has a different magnitude, expenses has a different magnitude, and student faculty ratio has a very small magnitude, right? So if you want to calculate the distances, then the problem is the magnitude, because of the variation in the magnitude, the clusters will not form in the right way. They may not be formed in the right way. Hence, we need to standardize the data, right? So we are going to standardize the data here. And in order to standardize, we call standard scalar function. In Python, if I have to standardize, then I use scale function, or I use custom function normalize. Here I am calling standard scalar function, which is going to create Z transformations on your data. So let us import this. I have PySpark.ml.features import standard scalar, and use that standard scalar to fit onto your features. And once it is applied, the output will be transformed features. Okay, so I'm using standardization. With standardization, yes, true. So this is the inputs that you're going to pass. And the output that I'm defining this particular task as scalar, and to this scalar I'm fitting the data. Here I'm fitting the final data which has these features. Okay, let me fit the data here. Okay, now this is the scalar model. This is how I fit, and I want to transform the data into cluster input data. Okay, you can say cluster input dot show. Cluster input data dot show. You can see this is transformed data. Z features are transformed. It has a lot of decimal values. Of course, you can define this by adjusting the decimal values and all those things. You can manipulate the data later. Okay, but it has transformed these values into a smaller scale. Now to apply k-means, even in Python, it's just k-means and the number of cluster centers. Here also we do the same thing, k-means. If I want to split the data in 3 clusters, then this is what I do. Simple. If I have to do it for 2 clusters, this is what I do. You just pass the input standardized data and centers. You define this k-means 3 and k-means 2. So I'm fitting it with the data, transformed data, standardized data, and this will give me the within sum of squares value. Remember I said the least this within sum of squares, better the model. So you can see one is 61, the other one is 47. But of course, as and how you improve or as and how you increase more and more clusters, the Tejas, the Z features is basically the standardized data here. We have standardized using standard scale. So yes, Z scaled data would be there on the feature vector. Feature vector has a vector of all the input features in a single column. Okay, right. Now if you look at this WSS values, of course, as and how your cluster values are increasing, the number of clusters increase, the WSS value will obviously come down. The total within sum of squares will obviously come down. So out of all these different k values, what is the ideal k value can be identified using the elbow curve. Okay, so to visualize the elbow curve, let me first calculate the total within sum of squares for different values of k, not just 2 and 3, but I'm calculating for different k values. So here first I define TWSS as null list. It's an empty list that I created. Okay, and on this TWSS, let me first execute it here. So I'm defining k value as 2 to 9. That means you will take 2 clusters, 3 clusters, 4 clusters, 5 clusters, 6 clusters, 7 clusters, 8 clusters, and 8 only, not the 9 clusters. 8 till 8 clusters you create the k-means clustering. So you execute the same line, but here you say k is equals to k, and you fit that k-means model with input data, and then compute the WSS within sum of squares, right? And here you are appending those WSS values into this empty list, so it accumulates all those WSSs for different values of k. Okay, let me show you what happens if I execute this. It is also going to print the k value and the respective within sum of squares values. You can see here. So for k is equals to 2, it is 61. For k is equals to 3, it is 47. K is equals to 39, so on and so forth. Of course, right, as and how your cluster values increase, number of clusters increasing, the values that it stores will also decrease. I mean, initially if you say 2 clusters, out of 25 universities, each cluster might have more number of universities. So some of the differences would increase, right? from the center to different universities increases. When you say 8 clusters, the number of universities within each cluster would be less. Maybe I'll have 3 clusters, 3 universities in one cluster, maybe. So distance from the center to these 3 universities would be obviously less. So the overall value is getting decreased, but I have to see the net decrease, right? Maybe by looking at the number, it is not that good looking. I mean, you'll not be able to interpret much. So we will import matplotlib and come up with elbow curve using this plt.plot. This is the k value. On x-axis, I will have range of values from 2 to 8. And on y-axis, I'll have TWSS values that I created here. Okay, and I'm basically writing the number of clusters as x-axis label. Y-axis, I'm saying total within sum of squares. And look at it. Maybe you can see when I have k is equals to 2, I have this value, but when I have k is equals to 3, there is a net decrease of this much in total within sum of squares. But here, if you see, the overall net decrease is not that much. Compared to this is less. But again, when I choose k is equals to 5, the data gets split a lot. So this is better, right? So I will choose k is equals to 5 as the best one. Because after this, look at this. When I split the universities in 6 clusters, the overall similarity, the homogeneity is not good. Compared to 5, 6 is bad, right? It is having more variations. We are trying to measure the homogeneity. So you can try with either k is equals to 3 or k is equals to 5. Ideally, these are giving you the most homogeneous clusters, right? So this is how we identify the best value of k, right? Now let me close this and let me define k is equals to 5. We have already seen k is equals to 3. So I'm defining k is equals to 5 here. And I'm saying k means set k is equals to 5 for this particular data set. So you can basically pass this set of input features as this, or you can say z features here. Okay, execute this. And then you're fitting this data cluster input data where it has z features, right? From that it picks up the z features, and then once you develop the model for 5 clusters, it is also showing you the cluster centers. So these are your cluster centers. Let me print those cluster centers. I'll say print, but this cluster centers are list of the values, so I have to use this for loop to show you the 5 cluster centers. It is a multi-dimensional space data set, right? So for SATS code, what is the ideal center for all the universities that you have? If I want to see the overall values, then you can also see, remove this and calculate this. This will show you the actual data points. But yeah, because of the decimal values, you'll not be able to see this. Seed. Okay, the set seed is basically for passing the sample data. Okay. It makes sure that you are having the same data set. Oh, it's already shown here. Yeah, this is what you get. These are the cluster centers. If I say yeah, these are the cluster centers. Right, so set seed is basically used when you are passing sample data to make sure that every time you execute, you get the same clusters, same sample data, you use that. not to really worry about it. Yeah. Now, how do I get the prediction on clusters of my data set? So I have applied clustering, k is equals to 5, for example. I want to understand which university belongs to which cluster, right? So first select the output. Here the default keyword is prediction, like how you created feature vector with a name called feature. The default name that I have to use is called as prediction. This would basically give you the cluster value membership. So you are applying the same model that you have defined above, which is 5 clusters. Here you defined it, right? So using that, you are transforming the input data set and you are selecting the university name as well as the output, that is your cluster membership, right? And I'm saying collect the output from this, collect and save that into rows. Okay. Now, if you want to see a specific output, you can say rows and then try and see the list. So you can say rows and put a list column. Oops. Yeah, so this is basically your one of the row, 3 rows basically you are seeing here from 0 to 3. Brown University belongs to 0 cluster. Caltech University belongs to first cluster. CMU University belongs to 0 cluster. Like that you can basically view it. So what I'm doing is I'm converting this list data into a proper data frame. Okay, let me save that in a data frame, and I'm calling it as df.pred. Okay, data frame.prediction. And I want to see all the values. If you say show, it is going to show you these memberships. Okay, this prediction is basically the output, right? So that's how you basically create your clusters. So you can put these course data. Let me say k is equals to 5. These are the centers. Okay, creating predictions, and this is what you get. And here converting the course and showing the. Yeah. So this is how we have 5 clusters here from 0 to 4. And you can also see how many clusters, how many records are there in each cluster. On the final data, oops, what is this? Oh, final data, I don't have this, right? Okay, let me change this. I don't have, I have features on the final data, so let me do it on. Yeah, so on final data, we'll try to see the output. So cluster 1 has 2 universities. Cluster 2 has 3 universities. Cluster 0 has 9 universities. This is how the data got grouped. If I say rows, it's a list format. I'll not be able to see it. I'll not be able to view it. Right? Hence, we are converting that into a proper data frame, DF, and then showing it as, it's a not a Python data frame, remember, it's a Spark data frame. It's a memory abstraction, right? So from there, you are going to visualize your data lines. So this is how we do clustering on the given data set. This is basically your output that you want to see. So Brown University belongs to 4th cluster, CMU belongs to 4th, Columbia 4th, all these are 4th clusters, right? So this is how we can try and cluster the data set, friends. Unsupervised learning clustering module or clustering algorithm using Spark machine learning library. If I have a huge data set, what you are seeing here, the data set that I have used is only 25 records, 25 data points, right? But if I have, imagine 250, 100,000 universities I'm taking all the universities across the globe, assume. Then based on the features, these input features, the 6 input features that I've taken, can I group them into, let's say, 3 clusters or maybe 4 clusters or 5 clusters, whatever the clusters that K value that you define, right? Now, if I take such a big data set, R or Python programming languages are going to take literally a huge amount of time, right? R might even crash out because of the calculations that it has to do. Whereas Python might take a little more time, but it might work out. If I do it in Spark, then the execution is becoming very speed, very fast. But of course, you need to have a cluster setup. This is how your machine learning can be implemented on Spark for distributed memory, in-memory computing capabilities, which basically gives us the results at a much faster rates. Hope you have enjoyed. Now this is my profile. People, if you are not familiar, this is me. My name is Sharad. You can connect with me to discuss more about Spark and its capabilities. And these are my social media links, LinkedIn and Facebook profiles. You can please connect to me to discuss more. And if you want to connect with our organization, 360 Digit MG, these are the links. And all these majority of the webinars that we are doing, the programs that we are doing, they go and sit in your in our YouTube channel. So you can also access these videos from YouTube channels. Slowly these videos get uploaded into YouTube channel. Please subscribe, and if you have any comments, you can leave your comments on our social media profiles, guys. Hope you have enjoyed the Spark learning. If you have any questions, please post them now. Thank you so much.